Beyond headlines screaming threat and revolution, beyond sanctions and diplomatic standoffs, beyond 40 years of narrative calcified into certainty, lies a country most will never see. Iran exists in global consciousness as abstraction, as geopolitical chess piece, as monolith defined by government rather than geography, by politics rather than people. This is a land where ancient empires carved their names into mountain stone, where poetry outsells politics, where hospitality flows like ritual, and daily life unfolds beneath snow-capped peaks with rhythms older than revolution. To cross into Iran is to enter a nation invisible, not because it hides, but because the world has chosen to look away, replacing complexity with caricature, nuance with noise. The country stretches across 1.6 million square kilometers, larger than Alaska, containing deserts that could swallow European nations and northern forests, so green they seem transplanted from fairy tales. Yet in collective imagination, Iran shrinks to a single dimension, compressed into headlines that erase millennia of civilization, millions of individual lives, landscapes so varied they defy singular description. This is the gap between myth and reality, between fear and lived experience. Crossing it requires nothing more radical than seeing. Crossroads of civilizations. Iran sits where continents collide, where the Silk Road once threaded caravans laden with silk, spices, and ideas between East and West, where empires rose and fell like tides, leaving deposits of culture that never fully washed away. This is geography as destiny, a landscape that forced interaction, exchange, and synthesis. The ancient trade routes that crossed Iranian plateaus carried more than goods. They transmitted Buddhism from India, brought Chinese inventions westward, spread Persian administrative systems eastward. Merchants speaking a dozen languages rested in caravanserais, fortified waypoints, where strangers became temporary neighbors, where the collision of cultures became commerce, conversation, and occasionally conflict. The Achaemenid Empire stretched from Egypt to India, the first superpower to govern multiple civilizations without erasing their identities. Later, Sasanian Persia stood as Rome's equal, trading diplomatic letters and military blows across contested borders. Each empire left layers architectural, linguistic, cultural, that subsequent conquerors could suppress but never fully destroy. Geography shaped this openness and vulnerability. No natural barriers protect Iran's borders, deserts can be crossed, mountains have passes, coastlines invite invasion. Defense required diplomacy as much as fortification, creating a culture that learned to absorb influence while maintaining identity, to bend rather than break under conquest's weight. Iran became not a closed world but a bridge, a civilization built from collisions that transformed invasion into innovation, occupation into synthesis. Tehran, megacity at the foot of the mountains. Tehran sprawls beneath the Alborz mountain range like a modern city pinned against geological time. Snow-capped peaks tower over concrete and chaos, their white summits visible from traffic-choked highways where millions navigate daily commutes that turn movement into meditation on patience. This is a city of 9 million official residents and perhaps 4 million more uncounted, where universities produce engineers and poets, where cafes hidden on side streets serve espresso beneath walls decorated with band art, where young women in mandatory headscarves smoke cigarettes and debate philosophy with intensity that would surprise those who imagine Iranian youth as uniformly oppressed or uniformly pious. The northern neighborhoods climb toward the mountains, where wealth buys elevation and cooler air, where modern apartments feature floor-to-ceiling windows framing peaks that seem close enough to touch. Descend southward, and the city changes, becoming denser, poorer, more traditional, where women's coverings grow more conservative, and economic anxiety replaces boutique concerns. Yet even in South Tehran, life proceeds with normalcy that contradicts every foreign assumption. Mechanics repair cars with improvised parts, making sanctions an engineering challenge rather than a death sentence. Fruit vendors arrange pomegranates into pyramids of precise geometry. Children navigate smartphones with fluency that erases technological isolation. The mountains watch this daily performance with indifference, born from seeing empires come and go. They were here before Tehran existed, before Islam arrived, before Persians called themselves Persian. They will remain long after current headlines fade into historical footnotes, their snow-capped peaks towering over whatever comes next. 4. Memory and Power. The National Museum of Iran. Inside Tehran's National Museum, artifacts spanning 7,000 years rest in climate-controlled cases like memories preserved in amber. Here, history becomes physical clay tablets inscribed with Elamite script, bronze weapons from forgotten wars, ceramic vessels that once held wine drunk by people whose language no one speaks anymore. The museum traces continuity across millennia, showing how each conquest added layers without erasing foundations. Elamite civilization gives way to Median, which yields to Persian, which transforms under Greek influence, which absorbs Parthian traditions, which evolves into Sasanian splendor, which Islam reinterprets rather than destroys. Persian identity emerges not as singular essence, but as accumulation, a civilization built from what survives catastrophe. When Mongols burned libraries and built pyramids from skulls, when Arab conquest brought new religion and alphabet, when Greek armies marched to Persepolis, the bedrock remained recognizable through catastrophe. This is history as lived inheritance, not academic abstraction. Modern Iranians see their faces in ancient reliefs, recognize their hospitality customs in Achaemenid diplomatic protocols, hear echoes of their language in inscriptions older than most European nations. The past is not dead, or even past, it breathes through daily life, like underground rivers feeding surface wells. Walking through these galleries means confronting time's depth, understanding that current events, however dramatic they seem, represent single frames in a film thousands of years long. Empires that seemed eternal are now museum exhibits. What feels permanent today will someday be artifacts in cases, studied by people who cannot imagine our concerns. Persepolis, Empire in Stone. 2 hours from Shiraz, where desert meets mountain foothills, Persepolis rises from the plain like a vision half-remembered from dreams. These ruins represent the ceremonial heart of an empire that once ruled half the known world, where tributaries from across the Achaemenid realm brought gifts to kings who called themselves King of Kings. The stone reliefs, still legible after 2,500 years, show delegations from across the empire. Babylonians, Egyptians, Scythians, Indians, each carrying regional gifts, each wearing their own cultural dress. This was empire as diversity, conquest framed as protection, dominion imagined as harmony among nations. The gate of all nations opens onto staircases carved with such precision that no mortar binds the stones, only weight and geometry holding them in place through millennia of earthquake and invasion. Columns rise toward sky that has watched empires come and go with meteorological indifference. The reliefs depicting royal guards, their beards curled with such care that individual hairs remain visible, suggest an empire concerned with beauty as much as power. Alexander burned Persepolis in 330 BCE, whether as drunken accident or calculated destruction, ending the Achaemenid dynasty but not Persian culture. The flames consumed wooden roofs and treasures, but stone endured, becoming more powerful as ruin than it ever was as palace. Today, these columns speak louder through their brokenness than they might have whole. This is the paradox of empire built to last forever, destroyed in an evening, yet somehow more permanent in memory than in marble. The stones teach that power is temporary, but culture, if deep enough, outlasts conquest. Shiraz, poetry, gardens, and soft power. Shiraz breathes poetry like other cities breathe pollution. This is where Hafez and Saadi composed verses that every Iranian can quote, where gardens become philosophy in plant form, where beauty serves as resistance to the hardness of history. The tomb of Hafez draws pilgrims who are not religious in any conventional sense, but treat his poetry as scripture. They open his collected works at random, reading whichever verse appears as divination, finding guidance in lines written 700 years ago about wine, love, and the futility of rigid piety. His poetry celebrates pleasure and questions authority with such linguistic brilliance that even Iran's current government cannot fully suppress it. Suppressing Hafez would be like suppressing Persian itself. Saadi's garden tomb attracts similar reverence. His most famous lines appear in the United Nations building. Human beings are members of a whole, in creation of one essence and soul. This is soft power operating across centuries, Iranian humanism speaking to global conscience through verse that transcends its medieval origins. The gardens of Shiraz follow ancient Persian design principles. Water channels representing life flowing through geometric precision. Cypress trees pointing toward heaven. Roses blooming with colors that seem impossible. The whole composition creating paradise on earth. The Persian word for paradise, paradisa, gave English its word through Greek transmission, linguistic proof of Iran's gift to global imagination. These gardens are not mere decoration, but philosophy made visible. They impose order on nature without destroying it, create beauty that serves contemplation, offer refuge from desert harshness. In a region where water means survival, lavishing it on flowers and fountains represents abundance as spiritual statement. Poetry and gardens both represent power that cannot be seized by force, cannot be sanctioned away, cannot be destroyed by conquest. This is Iran's deepest strength, not military might, but cultural gravity that bends minds across centuries. Isfahan, architecture as identity. Isfahan is half the world, declares the old Persian saying, and walking through this city makes hyperbole seem like understatement. This is where the Safavid dynasty poured its wealth and ambition into architecture designed to make God jealous, where every surface becomes canvas for geometric pattern and calligraphic beauty. The mosques of Isfahan represent Islamic architecture at its mathematical peak, where symmetry approaches spiritual concept, where tile work transforms light into revelation. Stand in the Shah Mosque at the right moment, and sound behaves impossibly a whisper. At one point carries clearly to another, 50 meters away. Acoustic engineering creating spiritual experience. The bridges spanning the Zayandeh River serve functions beyond crossing. They are gathering places where levels create public spaces for conversation, contemplation, commerce. Co Sepol Bridge, with its 33 arches, becomes social infrastructure. Architecture, acknowledging that humans need beauty as much as functionality. These structures were built to impress eternity. The Safavid Shahs imagined their dynasty lasting forever, their capital remaining the cultural center of the Islamic world. their architectural achievements defining civilization itself. The dynasty ended, the capital moved, but the buildings remain, more impressive in survival than they might have been in original context. Isfahan teaches that architecture becomes identity when it embodies cultural values so completely that destroying the buildings would mean destroying the culture itself. The geometry speaks of Islamic intellectual achievement. The scale speaks of imperial confidence. The beauty speaks of a civilization that valued aesthetics as seriously as any European Renaissance. Naqshi Jahan Square. Naqshi Jahan Square in Isfahan stretches across 89,000 square meters, one of the world's largest public squares, a space designed for an empire that imagined itself as center of the world. 4 structures anchor its corners: a mosque for prayer, a palace for governance, a bazaar for commerce, and a smaller mosque marking daily rhythm versus Friday grandeur. This was urban planning as cultural statement, a square large enough that imperial ceremonies could unfold with thousands watching, yet intimate enough that daily life could proceed within its boundaries. Polo matches once filled the space, with shahs watching from palace balconies while riders competed below. Merchants sold goods under covered arcades, their voices creating commercial music that has echoed for centuries. Today, families picnic on the grass, planted where polo balls once flew. Children chase pigeons beneath arches designed to intimidate foreign ambassadors. Vendors sell ice cream where Safavid courtiers once schemed. The monuments remain grand, but life domesticates grandeur, turning imperial space into public commons. Water fountains mark the square's center, their recycling pools reflecting tile work and sky in patterns that shift with light. At dusk, when the call to prayer echoes from multiple mosques and pigeons return to roost in colonial masses, the square becomes most itself ancient and modern, sacred and secular, monumental and human, all coexisting without contradiction. This is public space as cultural glue, architecture creating social possibility. The square proves that humans need gathering places scaled to both individual conversation and collective ceremony, need beauty woven into daily experience, need monuments that remind them they belong to something larger than themselves. Yazd, living with the desert. Yazd rises from the desert like a city made from the desert itself. Its buildings the same dusty tan as surrounding sand, as if architecture grew organically from landscape rather than being imposed upon it. This is one of the world's oldest continuously inhabited cities, a place where humans learn to survive in conditions that seem designed to prevent human survival. The wind catchers rising from rooftops like square towers catch breezes and channel them downward into homes, creating natural air conditioning in a region where summer temperatures make shade a matter of survival. These badgers represent engineering genius, born from limitation. When you cannot escape heat, you must design around it. The Connaught's underground water channels, some stretching for dozens of kilometers, bring water from distant mountains through tunnels dug by hand across generations. These channels flow beneath the city like invisible rivers, their existence marked by surface holes that dot the landscape. This is water infrastructure older than most European cities, still functioning, still life-giving. The adobe buildings with their thick walls hold coolness like geological memory, maintaining interior temperatures far below exterior extremes. Courtyards create microclimates, where fountains and trees make heat bearable, where families gather after sunset when the city exhales the day's stored warmth. Yazd teaches survival through intelligence, not dominance. The city does not conquer the desert, but negotiates with it, using its properties rather than fighting them. This is architecture shaped by restraint, beauty emerging from necessity, human ingenuity turning limitation into livability. Zoroastrian legacy, fire and continuity. Outside Yazd, the towers of silence rise from hilltops like monuments to a religion older than Islam, older than Christianity, one of the world's first monotheistic faiths. These circular stone structures once served as sky burial sites, where Zoroastrians placed their dead, offering bodies to vultures rather than polluting sacred earth or fire with corpse contamination. The practice has ended, but the towers remain, their circular geometry still legible, their function still understood by communities that maintain Zoroastrianism despite 14 centuries of Islamic dominance. This is cultural persistence as spiritual resistance, maintaining identity through prayer and ritual when conversion would bring social ease. The fire temples preserve flames that have burned continuously for over 1,000 years, tended by priests who ensure the sacred fires never extinguish. These flames represent purity and truth, core concepts in Zoroastrian theology that imagines existence as cosmic struggle between light and darkness, truth and lie, order and chaos. Zoroastrian concepts influenced Judaism, Christianity and Islam, ideas about heaven and hell, angels and demons, linear time moving toward judgment, all show traces of Persian religious innovation. Yet the source faith shrunk to minority status in its homeland, surviving through communities that refused assimilation. This is Iran before religion became politics, before faith meant state power, before identity collapsed into singular dimension. The Zoroastrians preserved not just their beliefs, but evidence that Iranian identity contains multiplicities, that the land has always held many truths simultaneously. The Lut Desert, Earth's extremes, the Dashti Lut, stretches across eastern Iran like a landscape designed by a god with no love for life. This desert holds Earth's highest recorded surface temperature, 70.7 degrees Celsius, measured by satellite. Heat that would cook flesh, that makes metal untouchable, that creates mirages so convincing they could drive the sane toward madness. Wind has sculpted the desert into formations called Kalutz ridges and valleys, carved by millennia of erosion into shapes that seem almost architectural, as if ancient civilizations built cities that nature then refined into abstract sculpture. These formations stretch for hundreds of kilometers, creating labyrinths where human scale becomes meaningless. The silence here is not absence of sound, but presence of something deeper. A quiet so complete, it seems to have weight. No birds cross this emptiness. No insects buzz. No wind disturbs the still air in the protected valleys. This is nature indifferent to borders, to politics, to human concerns of any kind. The few who cross the Lut describe it with language borrowed from mysticism, not because they become religious, but because ordinary words fail to capture this extremity. This is Earth showing its capacity for hostility, reminding humans that most of the planet remains indifferent to our existence, that survival requires either avoiding such places or accepting them on their terms. The Lut has no politics, holds no grudges, knows nothing of sanctions or diplomacy. It simply is, vast and hot and merciless, a landscape that reduces human complexity to single imperative: survive or die. Nomads of the Zagros Mountains across the Zagros Mountains, the seasonal migrations continue as they have for millennia. The Qashqai, Bakhtiari, and other tribal groups move their flocks between summer and winter pastures, following routes older than the modern Iranian state, maintaining lifestyles that predate agriculture's domestication of humanity. Spring means movement upward toward mountain meadows, where snow melt creates temporary paradise, grass growing thick enough to fatten sheep and goats that will sustain families through the year. The migration involves entire communities, thousands of people, tens of thousands of animals, all moving with coordination that requires no written organization, only knowledge passed from parents to children across generations. The tents rise from packed loads like flowers blooming, their black goat hair fabric creating homes that can be assembled in hours and struck in less. Inside, carpets transform bare ground into rooms, dividers create privacy, portable possessions arrange themselves into domestic order. This is home as concept rather than location, family and community mattering more than walls and roofs. Autumn brings descent to warmer lowlands before winter snows make mountains impassable. The entire cycle requires reading landscapes like texts, understanding weather patterns with precision born from consequences when mistakes mean death, navigating by memory and landmark through terrain that would confuse map-dependent travelers. This is lifestyle older than the modern state, communities that maintain tribal identity and customs despite government efforts to settle them, to make them countable and controllable. They are living proof that not all Iranians accept the single-story modernity tells about how life should be lived. Kashan, merchant wealth and courtyard. Life in Kashan, the historic merchant houses hide behind walls so plain they seem deliberately ugly, offering no hint of the beauty within. This is architectural modesty as social statement, wealth displayed inward rather than outward, privacy elevated above showmanship. Step through unremarkable doors into these traditional houses and space transforms. Courtyards open toward sky, their proportions creating geometry that makes light dance across tile and carved stucco. Water channels lead to central pools that reflect architecture and clouds, doubling beauty through mirroring. The tile work covering walls represents craftsmanship so precise that patterns align across surfaces with mathematical perfection. These houses speak a social language about Iranian values, privacy, family, water as luxury, beauty as something to be earned by intimacy rather than displayed to strangers. The blank exterior walls protect against jealousy and taxation, while interiors lavish wealth on spaces where family gathers, where honored guests receive hospitality, where daily life unfolds away from public scrutiny. The wind towers rising above these houses catch breezes and channel them over underground water channels, creating natural cooling that makes summer bearable. The basements called sardabs descend into Earth's coolness, creating refuge when surface temperatures make movement feel like walking through fire. Kashan preserves this architectural tradition in enough examples that walking through the city becomes lesson in how space shapes culture, how design embodies values, how wealth can express itself through sophistication rather than ostentation. The Persian Gulf Coast, along Iran's southern coast, where the Persian Gulf meets land, a different Iran emerges. Here, humidity replaces desert dryness, date palms outnumber cypress trees, and the architecture shifts toward forms designed for heat and moisture rather than cold and dryness. The fishing villages lining the coast maintain rhythms governed by tides and seasons, their wooden duos setting out before dawn to harvest waters that have sustained communities for thousands of years. The catch feeds local markets and connects to trade networks that predate modern shipping, continuing commerce older than most European nations. The port cities, Bandar Abbas, Bushehr, carry histories written in layers. Portuguese forts crumble alongside Islamic architecture, evidence of European imperial reach that touched Iran but never fully conquered it. The British presence left administrative systems and English loan words, while the heat and humidity remained constants through regime changes. This maritime Iran rarely appears in foreign imagination, which pictures the country as uniformly arid. Yet the south contains ecosystems lush by comparison, temperatures moderated by water, even as humidity makes heat feel more oppressive. The culture here shows Arab influences more prominently. The cuisine features more fish and rice. The traditional clothing adapts to moisture that would destroy northern wool. This diversity reminds that Iran contains multitudes, that reducing the country to single climate or culture erases the complexity that any large nation contains. The Persian Gulf Coast is as Iranian as Shiraz or Tehran, yet feels almost foreign to northerners, proving that geography shapes identity as powerfully as politics. Qeshm Island, geology and isolation. Qeshm Island in the Strait of Hormuz, where half the world's shipped oil passes daily, where geography becomes geopolitics, sits like a geological museum displaying Earth's creative violence. Salt domes pierce the surface like ancient monuments, their striations recording millennia of tectonic pressure. Canyons carved by water and wind create passages through rock that seem designed by sculptors rather than erosion. The Hara mangrove forests, one of the few mangrove forests in the Persian Gulf, create ecosystems where land and water merge, where trees grow in salt water that would kill ordinary species. These forests shelter birds, fish, and crustaceans in landscapes that look transplanted from tropics rather than grown from Persian Gulf shores. The local culture on Qeshm preserves traditions distinct from mainland Iran. Women wear colorful masks called burqas, not Islamic coverings, but pre-Islamic traditions that continue despite mainland pressure toward uniformity. The clothing, the dialects, the social customs all mark Qeshm as place apart, connected to Iran politically but separate culturally. The geology attracts scientists who read the rocks like history books, finding evidence of ancient seas, volcanic activity, tectonic collisions. The Stars Valley, with its erosion-carved formations, looks like alien landscape, evidence that Earth creates strangeness, requiring no extraterrestrial explanation. Qeshm proves that Iran extends beyond borders most imagine, that the country contains landscapes and cultures that defy stereotypes, that nature shapes human culture in ways that national identity cannot fully override. Iranian cuisine, geography on a plate. Iranian cuisine maps the country's diversity onto plates, each region contributing ingredients and techniques shaped by local climate and history. The rice comes in varieties that reflect Persian obsession with perfection, each grain separate. The bottom layer forming tahdig, a crispy crust that diners compete to claim. Saffron colors rice golden and costs more per gram than gold. Its threads hand-harvested from crocus flowers that bloom for only days each year. The herbs sabzi used in cooking require knowledge to balance properly fresh cilantro, parsley, dill, fenugreek, creating flavors that define Persian cooking as distinctly as spices define Indian. The stews, called koresh, simmer for hours, combining meat with fruit pomegranate, quince, prunes in ways that confuse outsiders, expecting savory and sweet to remain separate. These dishes represent culinary philosophy that embraces complexity, that makes meals into occasions requiring time and attention. The ritual of Persian dining involves ceremony as much as eating. The sofre, spread cloth laid on floor or table, becomes temporary, sacred space where family gathers, where food serves as medium for connection. Refusing hospitality causes genuine offense, not performance, but cultural reflex that treats guests as divine messengers deserving honor. The continuity of taste means that dishes eaten today echo meals prepared under Safavid Shahs. That flavor connects modern Iranians to ancestors across centuries. Food becomes living history, each recipe containing knowledge refined across generations. each meal reaffirming cultural identity. Geography appears in ingredients: the pistachios from Rafsanjan, the saffron from Khorasan, the dates from southern groves, the fish from Caspian waters. Eating Iranian food means consuming landscape, climate, and culture, transformed through cooking into edible identity. Daily life under sanctions. In Tehran's bazaars and provincial markets, in mechanics' workshops and family kitchens, Iranians navigate sanctions with creativity, born from necessity turned permanent. The economic restrictions meant to pressure government instead become daily puzzle for ordinary people, who adapt through improvisation that would impress engineers. Mechanics keep ancient cars running through parts fabrication, machining components that can no longer be imported, creating substitutes that sometimes outperform originals. This is innovation through limitation, expertise developed because alternatives do not exist. The black market currency exchanges happen openly despite being technically illegal. Traders shouting rates that shift hourly. People converting rials to dollars to preserve savings against inflation that makes yesterday's prices seem like fantasy. The economy operates in parallel: official rates that no one uses and actual rates that govern real transactions. Young people access banned social media through VPNs, participate in global digital culture despite government attempts at isolation, maintain connections that sanctions intend to sever. The technological barriers create minor inconvenience rather than full prohibition, teaching digital literacy through necessity. Yet this resilience, should not romantic poverty or pretend sanctions cause no harm? They do. Medical equipment shortages, pharmaceutical scarcity, technology gaps all create real suffering. But the suffering produces neither compliance nor collapse, only adaptation. This is life continuing beneath geopolitics. Ordinary people refusing to let their existence be defined entirely by decisions made in distant capitals. The resistance is not political protest, but existential insistence that daily life matters more than diplomatic standoffs. The Caspian North. Green Iran along Iran's Caspian coast. The landscape transforms so completely that first-time visitors question whether they remain in the same country. Dense forests cover hills that rise from sea level toward mountains, their greenness shocking anyone expecting Iran to mean desert. The rice paddies here produce crops in conditions more like Vietnam than Middle East, their flooded fields creating mirrors that reflect sky and clouds. The wooden houses with sloped roofs designed to shed heavy rain look transplanted from Northern Europe, their architecture adapted to moisture rather than aridity. The climate brings rain measured in meters rather than centimeters, creating humidity that feels tropical, supporting vegetation that requires constant water. Tea plantations cascade down hillsides, their ordered rows producing crops that sustain northern livelihoods and national beverage culture. The coastal cities, Rasht, Bandar Anzali, operate with rhythms different from Tehran or Isfahan. The food emphasizes fish and herbs. The traditional dress adapts to moisture. The pace reflects climate that discourages midday activity during summer's oppressive humidity. This northern Iran rarely appears in foreign consciousness, which imagines the country as uniformly arid. Yet the Caspian region contains forests as dense as any in Europe. Rainfall that supports agriculture without irrigation, landscapes that could illustrate fairy tales rather than Middle Eastern narratives. The ecological diversity proves that Iran cannot be reduced to single image, that the country contains climate zones ranging from rainforest to desert, that geography creates variations no government can homogenize. Tabriz and the Azeri cultural sphere. In Tabriz, Iran's fourth largest city, the language shifts. Here, Azerbaijani Turkish dominates daily conversation, marking this region as place where Iranian identity contains Turkish cultural influence, where borders drawn by empires split communities that language and tradition unite. The Tabriz Bazaar sprawls across kilometers, its vaulted ceilings covering labyrinths where commerce has continued for centuries. This is one of the world's oldest covered markets, its architecture creating commercial ecosystem where generations of merchants have traded goods traveling from east to west and back again. The carpets woven in Tabriz carry patterns distinct from Persian designs further south, showing influences from Turkey and Caucasus, incorporating colors and geometries that mark regional identity. These carpets represent cultural complexity, Iranian in nationality, but Azeri in execution, proving that identity operates in layers that defy simple categorization. The city's proximity to Turkey and Azerbaijan creates cultural exchange that central government cannot fully control. Television broadcasts cross borders, languages flow between countries, family connections transcend national boundaries drawn by 20th century politics. This is Iran as mosaic, not monolith, a country containing multiple languages, cultures, identities that national government tries to unify but cannot erase. The Azeris, like the Kurds, Baloch, and Arabs within Iran's borders, maintain distinct identities while participating in broader Iranian citizenship. Tabriz teaches that nations contain multitudes, that borders rarely align with cultural boundaries, that identity operates at multiple scales, simultaneously, individual, local, ethnic, national, all valid, all real, all sometimes contradictory. Art, cinema, and soft expression. Iranian cinema speaks in whispers that echo globally, telling stories of ordinary life with such precision that they transcend cultural specificity to touch universal human experience. Directors like Abbas Kiarostami and Asghar Farhadi craft films where silence communicates more than dialogue, where everyday moments become philosophical inquiry. The films avoid spectacle for subtlety, preferring ambiguity to resolution, asking questions rather than providing answers. This aesthetic partly reflects necessity working under censorship that bans certain subjects and requires others to be handled delicately. Filmmakers learned to communicate through indirection, making limitations into artistic choices. The visual arts face similar restrictions: no human figures in certain contexts, no political criticism beyond acceptable bounds, yet artists find expression through abstraction, through calligraphy that transforms Persian script into pure design, through installations that speak politically through metaphor invisible to censors. This creativity under constraint produces art that international audiences recognize as sophisticated precisely because it cannot be obvious. The restrictions force depth, making Iranian cultural exports carry weight that unconstrained art sometimes lacks. The global success of Iranian cinema proves that culture transcends politics, that artistic excellence earns recognition regardless of government reputation, that soft power operates through beauty and truth rather than military or economic might. Young Iranian artists navigate between tradition and modernity, between acceptable expression and prohibited subjects, creating work that satisfies both personal vision and social possibility. Their success represents resistance not through confrontation, but through excellence, proving that culture cannot be fully controlled. Sacred cities and pilgrimage. Mashhad, Iran's second-largest city, exists primarily as pilgrimage destination, its entire economy and identity organized around the shrine of Imam Reza. Millions visit annually, transforming the city into perpetual motion of devotion, commerce, and spiritual seeking. The shrine complex expands constantly, swallowing surrounding neighborhoods to accommodate increasing numbers, creating sacred space measured in hectares rather than meters. The gold dome visible from across the city marks orientation point, the visual reminder that this space serves purposes beyond ordinary urban function. The pilgrims come seeking blessing, healing, connection to divine through proximity to holy remains. They circle the tomb in patterns that have continued for centuries, their movements creating human tide that ebbs and flows with prayer times. The elderly arrive seeking final blessing before death, the sick hoping for miraculous cure, the faithful performing religious duty. Yet pilgrimage creates economy as much as spirituality. Hotels, restaurants, carpet dealers, religious bookshops all depend on pilgrim spending. The sacred and commercial intertwine until separating them becomes impossible. They feed each other, creating ecosystem where faith generates income that supports faith infrastructure. This is religion as social infrastructure. Spirituality providing framework for movement and gathering that serves purposes beyond worship. The pilgrimage creates networks, builds connections between Iranians from different regions, reinforces national identity through shared religious practice. For outsiders who imagine Iran as uniformly religious, Mashhad might confirm stereotypes. Yet even here, gradations exist, the deeply pious and casually observant mixing, some seeking spiritual transformation, while others fulfill family obligations or seek social connection. Silence of the Salt Flats. The desert highways crossing Iran's central salt flats stretch toward horizons so distant they seem theoretical, creating isolation that feels almost meditative. These roads cut through emptiness, where human presence becomes brief interruption in landscapes that have looked essentially unchanged for millennia. The salt flats glitter under sun with brightness that hurts eyes, their crystalline surfaces creating illusion of snow in regions where snow never falls. The formations created by salt deposits, pushed upward by geological forces, grow into sculptures that erosion refines. Nature working with materials that resist organic life. Driving these routes means confronting scale that dwarfs human concerns. The kilometers accumulate without visual reference, distance becoming abstract concept rather than measurable reality. The isolation fosters introspection not through conscious effort, but through absence of distraction. Truck drivers crossing these expanses develop relationship with emptiness, becoming comfortable with solitude that would crack others. They navigate by landmarks visible for dozens of kilometers distant mountains, specific rock formations, the rare oasis where life persists despite hostile conditions. This is Iran's empty heart, the space between cities that reminds the country remains largely uninhabited, that human settlement clusters around water sources, while vast regions remain essentially wild. The emptiness serves purpose, allowing travelers to understand scale, creating space where mind expands to match landscape. The modern roads through ancient emptiness represent current Iran, overlaying previous versions without erasing them. The paving makes travel faster, but cannot eliminate distance, cannot make the desert less desert, cannot domesticate landscapes that remain fundamentally wild. Youth, education, and the future. In Tehran's universities and Shiraz's cafes, in Isfahan's art schools and Mashhad's computer labs, young Iranians negotiate between tradition and modernity with sophistication that would surprise those who imagine them as either revolutionary zealots or helpless victims. Iran's population skews young more than 60% under 30, creating demographic reality where the majority have no memory of revolution, no personal experience of the system's founding mythology. For them, the Islamic Republic is not revolutionary achievement, but inherited government, permanent, yet somehow temporary. These young people navigate multiple identities simultaneously: Iranian nationally, Persian or Azeri or Kurdish ethnically, Muslim culturally, if not always devoutly, digitally connected globally despite government attempts at isolation. They watch Turkish television series, follow American celebrities on Instagram through VPNs, participate in global culture while maintaining local identity. Education remains highly valued. Competitive university entrance exams creating pressure that defines teenage years. The irony that educated young people then face limited employment opportunities creates frustration that sometimes erupts into protest, but more often channels into emigration. The brain drain represents invisible protest against system that produces educated citizens, then cannot utilize their talents. Yet pessimism about Iran's future ignores these young people's agency and creativity. They create art, start businesses, maintain hope despite conditions that might justify despair. Their optimism is not naive, but strategic. They understand that political systems change while culture endures, that their generation will eventually inherit leadership, that demographics favor evolution, even if revolution seems unlikely. The change they seek arrives incrementally through individual choices, rather than collective uprising through music and fashion.